Welcome back from your coffee break, and we will continue with the three presentations that we have between now and lunch. 20 minutes for each presentation, and then we will arrive at the lunch break at the correct time. So I'm very delighted to introduce Professor Anastasia Sklyaruk to you. She is Professor of Practical Psychology at a private university in Ukraine and a senior member of the Ukraine Association of Umbrella Association of Psychotherapy. And she is going to speak to us about the ethics of psychotherapy in the frame of time. Over to you, Anastasia.
Hello, thank you. I have the presentation. Let me start it on the screen. So the topic of my speech is psychotherapy ethics within the time framework. So now we're to start our discussion, I suggest emphasizing the main notions and markers of the subject. Thus, ethics as a behavior standard, a complex of particular social, professional, group moral values. Talking about psychotherapy ethics, we keep in mind standards and moral codes of behavior between a psychotherapist and the client, or a psychotherapist and another psychotherapist. We also have to add the content of existence and time to this. As psychodramatists, we have the possibility and time, and sometimes we have to travel in time. So that's why I invite you to such a trip. If we look into the remote past, for instance, the ancient Greece times, and we visit a Spartan, then after a very nice dinner, host can offer us his lovely wife for a night after as a sign of honor of relations to us, and it will be ethical in relation to this woman or to the guests and to this man, or tempora or mores. So we see that time has a great importance. Concerning to an existent content, that's another example. Let's visit the USA in 1920s. At that time, Jacob Levi-Morano proposed a group therapy to the world, relying on his colleagues' research who were working in Massachusetts Hospital in Boston. At that time, group therapy was considered ethical, something that break all moral codes of conduct, and something that fight all borders of ethics of the time and show this therapeutic action efficiency. With the outbreak of the Second World War, this method gained popularization due to a big number of psychiatric patients and people injured in warfare, and a small amount of psychiatrists, practical psychiatrists, who could provide individual therapy for everybody who needed it. So a group therapy is a response to new specific existence conditions of that time. But still, it managed to overcome ethical standard borders before becoming the time of today's psychotherapeutic methods. So that's why we are very grateful to Morano for perseverance and courage. He offered an excellent, efficient method to the world. Returning to our discourse topic, we, in the context of our nowadays, we have to understand that the issue of ethics and psychotherapy is of the great importance and is still topical. To make a step into the future and imagine this, to forecast this, we have to concentrate on nowadays, because our nowadays or the present is something that we were doing and thinking about in the past, but our future is what we are dealing with and what we are thinking now. So I would like to give you my own history as an example. My granddad, who turns 100 years this year, was born in Sklyaruk village, Kyiv region, Ukraine. As the majority of Ukrainians of the day, he experienced famine, Holodomor, a terrible time of Ukrainian people, genocide. A carriage went through the village every day and collected dead people who died because of the famine. One day in 1933, when he was only 10 years old, he couldn't wake up his mother, and he went out to the road to ask for help. The guys from the carriage entered the house, and they looked at this mother, and they took pity out of this baby and left her alone. It was my great-grandmother Paraska, and thanks to her, I exist, my children exist, our generation exists.
My dear Anastasia, may I just interrupt a moment? There are several comments asking you just to speak a bit more slowly. What you're saying is so important, we all want to hear. There's time. Please speak a little slower if you can. Thank you.
Yes, I can speak slower. It's just I want to actually stick to my time limitations. So my grandmother, great-grandmother died from famine, but my granddad survived because of this. And up till 30 years, I had absolutely no idea about this family history. But all my life, I and many other Ukrainians have very specific attitude to food. If it's some kind of celebration or we have guests in our house, then we shouldn't have an empty place on the table. Very often we ask questions to ourselves, why do we need so much food? We understand that it's too much. We realize it, but nothing can be changed. We feel anxious. We feel not hospitable enough if we do not have enough food. Uh, Food should never end. It must never be over. In my childhood, I used to hide food. Then it seemed to me that salt, flour can come to the end, and I would take them from my hiding place, and everybody would be happy. And what about those very typical phrases in Ukraine? The main thing is that nobody is hungry. Well, we are not hungry, and thanks God to that. We hope that you aren't starving. I don't know where I know all those expressions from, but I have known them since my own childhood. When I leave my children at home alone, I always say to them, there is food in the fridge. Nobody will die from hunger. Nobody will starve to death. When I get back, I say, did you eat? Has anybody died of hunger? And always it seemed as a joke for me. It seemed something funny because it's understandable and it's known that we have food, that nobody is going to starve to death. But it was not understandable for me why it was so serious for us. And I consciously started treating those statements only recently. My children and I were in that Sklyaruk, in that village my grandfather is from. We were standing in the middle of the ruined hut, and we were calling my grandfather, and he was telling about his memories, where the oven was, where he slept, where was the hiding place, where he slept with his mom, and he asked, is there is an acacia which must grow in front of the house, because thanks to it, I didn't die of starvation. I was eating those blossoms from it for several weeks, and that's how I survived. When I was preparing the speech, I started thinking, how does it influence my identification as psychotherapist? And I understood finally that always I worry for nobody to live hungry from my psychotherapy. I always try to feed them, to satisfy their psychological hunger, to feed them with knowledge, for them to definitely have enough. It is the code of our trauma, which was gone through for generations ago. This is a trauma which still reminds about itself, and only on the fifth generation it was decoded. And at least I want to believe that it is not so powerful as it was in the previous generations. I am sure that this story is not the story of only my generation, but it is the story of all Ukrainian people. I ask everybody who is familiar to what I'm talking about, who knows these phrases, like the main thing is that nobody is hungry, knows from their very childhood. Thank you. And behind this phrase, we have another one. There isn't other people's trouble, because my grandfather survived in these terrible times thanks to the people, thanks to neighbors who were around him, who were also starving, but who were doing all their best to help each other. Almost 100 years have passed, but we, Ukrainians, are still suffering from a transgenerational trauma of our past, and this is our present. We complain to each other, and it is okay. We feed each other with advice. We are ready to solve other people's problems, even when nobody asks us about it. We sometimes do some good by force, and it's okay for us. That is ethical for us. It's our moral principles. I was talking with my friends from Austria, and very incidentally, I found out that in Austria, in Germany, maybe in other European countries, it is considered not ethical to complain about something and talking about your own problem to strangers, except a psychotherapist. But in our country, it's not ethical to answer to the question, how are you, with everything's cool, everything's okay, because it's impossible that everything is okay, that everything is good. And it means that this person doesn't want to communicate with you, does not want to be friends with you, avoids you. And it's our Ukrainian dimension, it is not ethical. Therefore, we see that the time and content of existence in its retrospect form the present. Therefore, if we want to understand the issue of ethics in the perspective of time, we must understand what effect today's existence will have on the future. I will shortly tell you about our present life of Ukrainians. Last Christmas, we planned to have family holidays and to buy a new car. Instead of it, we bought other things during last year. Several protective chemical sets, power generator, an electric heater, a stove, a gas portable stove, several spare gas containers, power banks, torches, candles, bulletproof vests, first aid kits, sleeping bags, other things. We have a constant stock of food, water, and petrol. We have grocery sets hid in our backyard and tinned fat and some other valuable things because those on the occupied territories had experienced food crisis because of the predatory position of the occupiers who were robbing and looting. And at the beginning of the attack, of the offensive, I was arguing with my husband. He wanted to buy a gun to protect the house, but it seemed to me that it was dangerous because I had another strategy, a female one. I insisted on the fact that the gun will not save us, but hospitality, in inverted commas, and poison will. So now I have a gun and poison at my home. My children know where they should hide if somebody comes to our house, and they know that they have to sit there very quietly and for a very long time until we come to them. And if we don't come to them and they get out of their shelters and they see strangers, then at first they should offer hospitality to them, some tea, and if they refuse, our children know where the gun is at home. I live in Zaporizhia. Our whole region, except region center, is occupied. We have a house at the sea, but this summer it was robbed and somebody from Russian occupants has been living there. My city is under shootings every day. I conduct a support group and I can describe it by several citations. I haven't made a bed for almost a year. After Mariupol, I afforded myself to get undressed for the night, but I put all my things into the bag, and when I hear air raid alarm, I run to the basement, and that's where I get dressed. I cannot sleep in my home. I go to the bomb shelter every evening. I will also tell you how it is done in our family. In July 2022, our first child was born. I could have never imagined in my life that in the 21st century, in the civilized country, I would have to give a birth to the child under the bomb's explosion. That night, when my son was born, my town was under shelling twice. Luckily, the other parts of our town were under shelling. I only noticed the doctors were worried and they were trying to take this important decision for them, whether they need to go down to the bomb shelter or not to continue with the labor. At that time, it passed, but a month later, a bomb came, the bomb hit this maternity house, and a lot of victims were there among doctors, about women and about babies. How to live under the shelling? It is when you just put a baby to sleep and you go to check other children's windows. Windows have to be a little open to, in order not to be broken, not to be hit. And then suddenly it's a bomb arrival, bomb hit. It's very scary. We do not have a bomb shelter. We do not have some kind of place to hide. Everybody knows there are places in the room where you have to be until you run to the baby if there is another hit. lie down in order to shield the child. You put him to the breast and you try to call your breast. You count the explosion. You identify by the sound that it is shot from S-300. You know that there are about 12 missiles and the goal quantity is about 6. And your brain figures out all the options. It counts the missiles. It defines the distance and the aim of the missile according to the blast wave. It examines all windows and doors, and it tries to estimate all the possibilities. And at the same time, you have to try to breathe. So you teach others, like you blow a candle, and at the same time you smell a flower because you're breastfeeding your baby. When you lie down, your baby takes a breath and freezes. It seems that he doesn't breathe. It seems that he doesn't move. You realize it, you understand it, and you're so worried, but it's important to count explosions. And I think that's, and then it seems that he's finished. You don't move during some time because you wait for bomb's explosion to repeat. But it seems that it is the end this time. You exhale, your body becomes soft, and your baby does the same. He takes a breath and then breathes out, and then he starts moving his hands and legs. The adrenaline is being released this way. It takes about 1 hour. You call children. You send messages into your family chat because you can't go to everybody and you can't leave your baby alone. You ask them, whether everybody is alive. Is it okay? I love you so much. Try to fall asleep. You have several hours to sleep because shelling will repeat closer to the morning. When children come down for their breakfast closer to the midday, you ask them, how are you? Is everybody alive? And it is a new trauma cut. You ask the same question to your relatives, to your acquaintances, to your friends. How are you? Are you alive? And that's where we start to move into the time prospect from this point. What does it mean to be alive? Why do we always check it? Perhaps because we hesitate about the fact whether we are alive or not. But how is it possible not to be alive? How it is not to be alive? Not to be alive, it means not to attend lessons after night shelling. It's not to pass entrance exams. It's not to baptize children, not to celebrate birthdays, weddings, and even not to even arrange a funeral. It is not to visit friends and not to invite friends and relatives because nobody is there. Everybody left. It's not to have a job because your company is on the occupied territory. It's not to leave your house for months because of danger. It's not to go on holidays, not to make any projects, not dreams because you don't want to deceive yourself and to be disappointed. It's not to wish for new purchases, clothes, jewelry, but to require only one thing, for this war to end as soon as possible. We are all frozen. We are all preserved psychologically. We wait for the end of this war. And we only count the explosions. We are stressed and concerned. Our mind does not relax. It figures out all the possible options, supervises, controls, keeps up with the news. How many years have to pass and how many generations have to grow for us to start living? We're all traumatized. Our children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren will have signs of this trauma. Majority of today's inquiries for therapy actually concerns this topic: how to conserve feelings, emotions, and life, how not to be afraid when you are afraid, how not to be angry when you are angry, how to be strong when you do not have enough power. We all have our feelings, but we do not have this opportunity. We can't afford to feel these emotions. That's why we strive to conserve and to hide them. But we understand that the time will come and all these emotions will catch up with us, with our children or with our great children. These emotions will catch up with us and they will bring this trauma caught until the 5th generation for 100 years to come. I would like to focus a little bit on some changes in psychotherapeutic space as well. Starting from the beginning of war, we all recovered from coronavirus, and that's great, but it left some consequences for us, which were kept by the war. I'm talking now about online lifestyle. If several years ago I asked you whether it is ethical to conduct therapy wearing pajamas, or if it is ethical to invite a client to your bedroom, or if it is ethical to conduct therapy from a bathroom, a box, or a basement. On the one hand, we are so close with our client like never before, because this person is in my house, he sees my wallpaper, my drawers, he can see my relatives' photos hanging on the wall. At here, social network, and some therapists desire to boast of something they eat, places they go on holidays, and people they meet. These are new ethical standards of the therapy. The personality of the physician is not a neutral one, abstinent, and he's not a secret character. He likes cats and whiskey, spends on the Maldives, and he's an active voter, a lecturer. So this is now public, and it's also about new ethical standards of psychotherapy. I might ask myself, how does this openness of psychotherapists can change transmission, for example, or transference? On the other hand, client does not see me, as well as I don't see this client. Generally, am I alive? Am I here? Because I can change my avatar picture, I can complete it with virtual reality, I can give the speech in a recording way, or to be an artificial intelligence, for example, a GPT chatbot. You're not able to touch and check this. We cannot see the whole picture entirely. We cannot have any opportunity to track the majority of nonverbal information, posture, movements, appearance, which we usually rely on. We have something completely different. We are learning online therapy, and it is a new challenge of today. We are learning to communicate to an avatar, but the process of communication is mostly not bilateral anymore. It is all wraps, freezes, conserves something which is human, alive, material, and physical. From the one side, the therapy does not have any limits, like space and borders. In my therapy group, there are participants from different parts of the world: Ukraine, Poland, Germany, Romania, Canada, England, Netherlands. They live in different cities, different time zones, different weather conditions, etc. The group dynamics of this entity is also different, because they don't have any competitiveness. There is only cooperation. Leadership is demonstrated through support and resource, and lots of other things that I can still research, and I am researching. And these are new reality and new rules, new challenges. On the other side, we have a new reality, which is the alternative for strictly defined concepts, such as safe space for therapy, abstinence, neutrality, honesty, transparency, competitiveness, transference, and a lot of other things and rules, ethical standards, which are under today's influence and undergo different modifications. This is the thing I would like to discuss during our symposium. All of us work with different methods and oversee, and we can see that none of those methods can actually be a pure one in online space. So I can assume that now we are forming new method of psychotherapy, online therapy. We only lack somebody so as courageous as Morano, who would describe and would prove that in the online therapy space there are other laws, a little bit other laws than in the real life therapeutic space. I will be courageously bold to make some futuristic assumptions that according to for the next 100 years, about 5 generations will experience and along with the consequences of today's conservation and escape into another additional online reality. But I still hope that my great-grandchildren, as well as we have done it, will be able to decode this trauma and start living their full real life. So let's summarize. Thanks to the psychodrama, we have visited Sparta in the ancient Greece. We have been to America in the 1920s. We have traveled to Ukraine of the famine time, and we have experienced today's Ukraine and the shelling and destructions. We have seen how the standards and moral rules of behavior in the society are changing and how it is reflected in the psychotherapeutic area. We have realized that time and existence content affect ethical principles and standards and makes today life in their retrospect and future. We also have proved that social traumas are transgenerational and are reflected in many generations, having an impact on all the aspects of our life, including a professional identification. The war, like in U.S. social trauma of Ukrainians, has already gained its own cut, which will affect the future of our several generations for many, many years and generations ahead. 15 million of people, according to the official data, have left Ukraine since a Russian full-scale invasion of the 24th of February in 2022, and the new online lifestyle realities have erased the boundaries of this trauma. Trauma of Ukrainian people is not and will not be only ours, like it was previously. by the example I had given you, according to the ethical standards difference between our how are you and the European one. The changing world, dynamic world, creates for us as for scientists a lot of challenges and offers us numerous opportunities, additional opportunities for research, brings new perspectives and common goal. That's why we have all the possibilities to work on that. I am extremely grateful to the Ukrainian Psychotherapeutic Union and European Association of European Psychotherapy Station for this platform, for this opportunity to explore these challenges together. So that's all I wanted to say. I have finished my report. Is everybody alive? That is great. It means we will continue living. That everything will be great. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you.
My dear Anastasia, thank you. You have spoken from your heart. You've spoken from the depth of your own experience, from the so difficult thing of your son being born during this time and breastfeeding your son. I've noticed all the messages that have come from your colleagues. I don't understand the Ukrainian, but I understand the emojis, and I think I understand what is being said. People are saying to you, they are experiencing the same as you, and thank you to you for voicing what other people are experiencing. They are saying to you, have heart, stay strong. It will come to an end. It will end. And it's important to stay alive, physically, mentally, emotionally. You're right that the effects will go forwards through the generations. You will need help to work through unresolved trauma. You and your people will need help to work through unresolved trauma. I passionately hope that European psychotherapists can be part of that help when the time comes. So thank you for sharing your heart with us today. I'm sure we are all so very moved by what you've said. Thank you, Anastasia.